Hi everybody, Dr. Dan here. So this video is about the Valesquez model of ethics, and specifically, I think this is a useful model to apply for project 3 in our professional writing class. Um, you don't have to apply this model, but I think this helps give you a little bit of a framework for thinking about ethical situations. It's also a really useful framework to take with you more broadly outside of this class, just to help you think about ethical problems which you face. And so I have some slides up in Canvas, and the when I teach this in class, I put this page two. You can look at the slides. Page two of this PDF. There's a child riding a bicycle, and it's a nice photograph, and the tree-lined suburban street, and all of that. And so I say, okay, what's wrong with this picture? Right? I'll give you a second to look at the picture, and maybe half the class they catch on right away, and then the other half is kind of like, what is there like? What's going to happen? What's wrong with this? I don't get it. But it's the child is not wearing a helmet, right? So you might not think this is a big deal, but then does that present, if you use this stock image at the company that you work at, could that present some kind of liability? Is there, you know, um, you have to think really carefully about the language and the visuals and the media that you produce and create when you're working at an organization. If that's a bad look, if you work for Coca-Cola or some big company or even, some nonprofit organization and you're like showing pictures of kids without helmets riding their bicycles, yeah, Okay, so that's just a kind of introduction to the myriad number of ethical problems that can come up when you're working professionally in the workplace. So I'll move ahead. Page four then of that PDF. We've just got some slides. It's a real basic overview of the Velasquez four-part model. And so for this assignment, I'm asking you to think about a local or regional or national or global problem, really broadly construed. It could be an economic problem, could be a environmental, could be political, could be a social problem, anything that interests you, and then to write a letter. And the challenge really is it's something you care about deeply, probably, if you're interested enough to write about it. But how are you going to present an objective, fact based, data driven, a compelling letter? How are you going to write a compelling letter addressed to somebody who actually matters and is in, I mean, we all matter, but someone who's involved in the decision making, someone who's involved, do they work at a specific company that's involved in this process? Do they work at, is it a politician? Is it a public figure that could actually move the dial in some direction? So I really like this assignment because I've had a lot of correspondence with like prominent, notable people around the world, and it always surprises me how you can email a senator and they might email you back, or like the president of Malta sent me an email once, and I just find that kind of interesting. I talked to like scholars at big universities, and it's a very small world in some ways, how interconnected we all are. So I think this is a fun assignment anyway. Okay, so let's look at the Velasquez model. Again, this is just a model to kind of help you think through an ethical problem. So the example I give in this week's discussion board is this really interesting um, ethical thorny problem that came up near my hometown, where this company is planning to build a rocket launch facility. So you've got those two really obvious sides, right? It's like on the one hand, it's going to stimulate the economy and create job opportunities, and it's going to have an potentially economic positive impact on the area, right? On the other hand, you're launching rockets, it's going to be noisy. Does that infringe on people's rights to privacy and to enjoy their home? And what if there's an accident? And what about the potential environmental damage that could impact a lot of people? I mean, it's like sulfide mining, right? I mean, the same thing. Jobs on one hand, potential fallout on the other hand. A lot of these, you can see, and then there's other stakeholders who have other perspectives too, right? So it's never even just a two-sided issue. It's a many-sided issue with multiple people involved, multiple problems that could potentially arise from any situation. And there's no right answer. There's no, that's why government is so difficult, right? Because you have lots of problems. Some of them are really complicated problems, and there's no purely scientific way to discern what the correct way to move forward is. So you have to debate and hash it out. So the Velasquez model gives you a little bit of a framework for thinking about ethical social problems. So it's rights, justice, utility, and care. I'll kind of quickly just go through these. So you can apply that framework to any kind of ethical situation to help you think through it. So rights are, what are the rights of the people involved? Well, I'll carry through with this space launch example. Do companies have the right to a free market? You may agree or disagree, right? On the one hand, you have like a heavy critique of capitalism. On the other hand, some people think, a free market is necessary to the vitality of society. So it's like, does the company have a right to build the rocket pad? Do the homeowners have a right to living in a safe environment if they purchase property somewhere near where they're planning on building that rocket launch site? Um, Maybe do the animals have a right to like just be peaceful and be a bird? Does a bird have rights to just be a bird? And what about the people who are there um, indigenous peoples whose land is going to be impacted by this disturbing the area? There's lots of different. So what are the rights of people involved in the decision? That kind of helps you think through um, some of the impacts, right? And then expectations and so on. So justice is the second part of this framework, the Velasquez model. Justice is how are the effects of the decision going to be applied um, across people and groups of people and different people. So an example, let's say we're in the camp who believes that building a rocket pad launch site in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan is going to create a lot of jobs and a lot of economic opportunity. Okay, but who will benefit? Is it actually going to be local individuals who live in the area who will actually be offered high paying jobs at this facility? Where are the profits going to go? Is it some out of state company? And I don't know. I'm just purely thinking through this from a theoretical perspective of the model. I'm not making any arguments here. I'm just thinking through it. This was an issue with the hospital that I worked at. It's like they switched from a nonprofit to a for profit model, and a company in Tennessee bought the hospital in Michigan. So it's like the CEO is making $15 million a year. Meanwhile, the nurses are striking because their pay hasn't gone up in years. So justice is this who benefits, right? Who are the people that are actually are the benefits distributed equally among people, or are a select few people actually going to benefit from the decision? That's justice. The distribution of effects from a decision. How are the effects distributed? Both positive and negative effects. Who benefits and who is most hurt, and how is that distributed? Okay, utility. Utility is about the positive and negative effects that an action or policy has or might have on others. So the example here I give is, you fire 10 employees and you outsource the labor at your company, say, um, And you think that that makes sense because you're saving, you know, almost $500,000 a year by firing these 10 employees and hiring some outside firm. But think about the secondary rippling effects. That's utility, right? You know, maybe by doing that, maybe firing 10 people in a small community, you've damaged the reputation of your company. You've damaged the reputation of your organization. It has a rippling secondary effect that could cost you way more than $500,000. You know, it could have a crippling effect on the business or the organization. So utility is you're thinking about scope and positive and negative effects and secondary effects and tertiary effects, um, and the actual impacts that decisions are going to have. Finally, in the Valesquez model, you have care, and care is this kind of value based idea that Valesquez is bringing in. It's about the humanity of the situation, of, you know, remembering that, yeah, we're okay, say we're debating rocket launch, building a rocket launch site, but like, these are real people that are going to be impacted. Have you stopped and you actually thought about, you know, the company proposed that they would like a certain number of people would have to evacuate their homes regularly when they were planning to launch a rocket. I mean, is that reasonable? You know, don't you care about those people? Maybe they live there for 30 years and you really you want to ask them once a week or once a month to they have to pack up. What about babies? You know, I don't know, right? That's care. That's what Velasquez is. That's why Velasquez brings us up is like, you know, you got to really think about the people involved and how it's going to affect them, and it's based on that kind of an altruistic value of like primarily care of human life is valuable, and you have to be you have to remember the humanity in your decision making. It's not all just about profit motive. It's like there's real humans involved in every decision that you make. Okay. Um, I think that's all I got. I wanted to present that four-part Velasquez model: rights, justice, utility, care. And I want to just, you know, sideline here. I'm not making any arguments. I'm just like theoretically talking through an example for you, to see how we could apply rights, justice, utility, and care to an ethical situation to help think through multiple different arguments, multiple different stakeholders, multiple different people who are involved. It helps. I really like this model because it helps take a complicated, you know, messy situation, and it helps give you a little bit of a framework for start thinking about the real effects and impacts and decisions that are going to have to be made. So there you go.